how I've been talking a lot about the microbiome lately and how important it really is. But how do we know what's in there for sure and how what's in there is affected by certain triggers or stressors in the environment and even in our food? Well, that's why we're jumping on Zoom now to talk to Carol Hughes, who is instrumental in a massive research project all about the microbiome. I'm Anna Webb. Welcome to A Dog's Life. Carol Hughes, welcome to A Dog's Life.
Yes, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, gosh, I was so eager to get you on because all the listeners are very tuned in to this thing called the microbiome. And you're behind and you've helped create the pet biome.
Yes.
Tell us a bit more about that because I wasn't aware of it, to be honest.
Yeah. We started it. I'm the kind of person who if a problem needs solving, you jump in at the opportune moment, and then you work really hard to find the right answers. And I think that's how we got into the microbiome with dogs. We were, I guess, funded. We've got quite a strange history, but we were funded by the Welsh Government to research active plant compounds as antimicrobials for horses and dogs and people. And at some point, we kind of went off to tangent and to do dogs and horses. And we then were funded to research obesity in dogs, and we were introduced to some microbiome specialists at Aberystwyth University, and we've been going ever since. Really since 2014, we've been looking at what goes on in the microbiome and trying to find out answers with some of the top researchers in the country. And in 2018, we then launched first commercial service, but always with the mind to keep improving what we're doing and keep finding the answers, and to do it with, as much integrity as you can, because it's a very complex kind of area, really.
Well, really complex. And I mean, you must have been really on the forefront of this because, it's been muted for ages about the link. For example, my mum got bad dementia. So it was so interesting for me to sort of learn how, the brain and the gut are connected and this
Yeah,
extraordinary connection that kind of links into yoga and even dance, so much as
yeah,
your toe is connected to your neck, we're a whole,
yeah.
organism. It's fascinating to me. But explain, because I've been looking on your website and everything, and I know you've recently harnessed artificial intelligence
Yeah,
to actually help with your diagnosis of poo samples. Is that how you do it?
yes and no. We the microbiome is incredibly organized because it's an ecosystem. So once you've got tuned in to its language, I actually find it really straightforward and logical to work out who's doing what, especially with the backup of so much research, 10, 20 years of research in human and the human side. And we're also linked with Illumina. Well, on BaseSpace, we have a research sharing platform, so we can share data with scientists all around the world on that platform. But with the AI, how that's helped is that when you're looking, I think especially relating to the environment, when you said that whether you're doing dance or yoga or what you're doing within the environment, you're right. It is an all-in-one thing. You're linked to everything. And I think with the AI, it helps to pick out those bacteria that are maybe not in the microbiome in large percentages, say for digesting carbohydrates, but are there because they speak to the brain or they speak to another part of the body. And it's not always obvious straight away. So the AI has helped us with that, but then we use it to look at population, to compare to the population database so that we can be accurate in what we do.
It's very interesting also, you've studied obesity, and, it's interesting that some humans believe they have a fat gene. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
and of course, dogs are sadly getting fatter and fatter. You
yeah,
could say, so is the human population. And of course, obesity causes a lot of disease, not least arthritis and pressure on the joints. But we're seeing diabetes in dogs, which,
yeah.
back in the day didn't exist in dogs. So, what did your research illustrate?
To start with, we were looking at a plant steroid to increase metabolism, which I think we did 4 or 5 years, and it did work. However, we've kind of evolved where we're going, the direction we're going. We still use that plant compound, which is a steroid, or it's not anabolic, so it doesn't change the hormone system, but it does impact energy, which is a good thing. Um, but we then moved on to looking at antibiotic resistant bacteria. There's a gang of bacteria called the Bacteroidetes, and they're divided into 3 portions, and one portion digests carbs, one set digests mucin and blood. So if you're feeding raw, you've got more of them in the microbiome. And then the third ones are digest sugar, but they're antibiotic resistant. And so it means that you can't get rid of them out of the microbiome. And it also means when you feed antibiotics, you may get rid of the other 2 groups related to the mucin and blood and to carbohydrates, but you won't get rid of the sugar ones. So
Right.
it means then that the microbiome is full of sugar digesting bacteria that are antibiotic resistant. And then that causes the problem of obesity. They put on weight because they're so efficient at digesting sugar, of which a dog doesn't really get when you think
Right.
about sugar
Well,
or
yes. So why
carbs.
exactly? So why are we seeing that particular strain of bacteria in dogs? Has that strain of bacteria become more in dogs as
Yeah,
dogs have eaten more processed food?
yeah, yeah. And I think there was a massive difference, a massive change during COVID. We did do the trial with the kind of vet hospitals through the veterinary, I think it was the veterinary times. And we looked because the microbiome suddenly changed during COVID and the antibiotic resistant bacteria increased, I would say, by about 25%. I don't know why that happened. It was an event for sure that happened in that year of lockdown. But I really, we're just a small outfit. It would take a lot of researchers to really get to the bottom of why and how. But we saw that change then, and it hasn't gone back in some dogs. It's probably getting worse. The microbiome is losing its diversity. The antibiotic resistant bacteria are increasing, and the biome is becoming more efficient at extracting the wrong kind of nutrients.
So worrying. Do you think stress has anything to do with it?
Yeah, I have someone has kind of pointed that out, and I think yes, for sure, especially with the loss of diversity and maybe not going outdoors in the right kind of environment as much.
Yes. Or again, from an enrichment point of view, if you're thinking the brain feeds back to the microbiome, if dogs are kind of in a permanent state of semi anxiety,
Yeah,
then maybe it's working the reverse way round.
yes, yeah, for sure.
It was interesting, actually. I don't know if you've read the amazing book, The Forever Dog by Dr. Karen Becker and Rodney Habib. I don't know, Carol, if you've read that. It's very
No, but
good.
someone did say, and I will read it. Yeah, yeah,
It's
I will
brilliant.
read
It's really interesting, actually. There's a lot on the microbiome in there, actually, and quotes from Dr. Tim Spector himself, the kind of the godfather of the microbiome in humans. Yeah, very interesting. And there was a case in Oregon in America where a load of pit bulls were seized from a nasty dog fighting ring of nasty people. And the welfare organisation behind it split the dogs into two groups.
Oh
Those that were,
yes, yeah,
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 did
yeah,
you hear about this? Dogs that were
yeah,
definitely dog to dog aggressive, okay,
yes,
were in one group. Dogs that showed no outward aggression on purpose to other dogs were in another group. And lo and behold, their poo samples were studied, and the microbiome, the bacteria in the poo, were completely different,
yeah,
suggesting that, again, certain bacteria promote sort of more happy vibes, and other bacteria can promote, or lack of a happy bacteria can
yes.
promote more aggressive tendencies, perhaps.
No, no, that's absolutely right. I think that's really clear in dogs. You do have the bacteria that produce happy chemicals. We do actually have a reading on the report to show if your dog has the happy chemicals. And one of the biggest drop falls comes if they're on long-term medication or they've had antibiotics. That tends to reduce those bacteria, making them more prone to anxiety. And also some dog wormers will do the same.
Oh, gosh, I always recommend in my consultancy, Carol, not to do wormers, but to do like
Yeah.
they do in Scandinavia, test before you treat.
Yeah.
Again, using 3 days poo samples, using the first poo, which I assume you must ask for when you're doing your test. Do you ask for the, I hope no one's eating. Do
Hmm.
you ask for the first poo of the day to be sampled in getting the samples for you to study?
No, we have done longitudinal studies, and we haven't found that it makes a difference to the sample. So we don't ask for that. The When we're collecting poo in our samples, it's preserved for the genome because we're extracting the genes. So there is kind of quite a core anyway, and it doesn't seem to matter what time of the day you do it. The genome doesn't change massively, so we don't mind too much.
It's so fascinating. So, just quickly explain, if people are interested, like me, in getting this done to analyze my dog's microbiome. So, I asked Tim Spector if he would do it, but he said, I do humans. So,
Yeah,
um,
I don't think that you can't swap the labs, can you? I mean, we do any animal in the world, but we can't do humans. So yeah,
hmm.
it must be something to do with the lab, mustn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Or yes, exactly. Or yeah, exactly. Like, vets can't treat humans, and vice versa, I suppose. But yeah. So what would I do, Carol? Take me through the process of getting my dog's
Well,
poo to
you
you.
you you just have it. It's a tiny little what we call a bee tube. Because we're using a research lab, and it's really important to us. The research part of it, I have to probably say, is probably more important than the commercial side. It's just the way we've always worked. So we're looking for high quality results at species level, so not at genus level. We actually want to dig really into the depth of what is going on in there. And the relationships of the bacteria are important. So you get a kind of a commercial, it's not a nice, fancy, well, I think it's quite nice, and it's got quite a nice box, a nice kind of purple and blue box. But the tube is just a tube full of preservative. It's tiny, it's a bead tube, so a 5 ml tube, and you put in the tiniest amount of poo into that tube using a spatula or forceps, tweezers, and then you send that off to us when we send it to the lab. Um, it takes some time for them to analyze it because we're using a research lab. They have to do maybe 100 samples in one go. But again, it doesn't bother us too much. I think there are places that will do it quicker, but the results aren't as good, and it's the quality of what you get back that's
Yeah,
important, because
absolutely.
it means then that you can use that. When we have some people, we're still working through it 2 years later, because the quality is so good, and the depth of analysis is so good. And then we put it into a report, probably I think it's about 30 pages, and then I do a separate vet summary, which is specific to your dog, which is really important because every dog is different. And there's also a master key to the microbiome. We found that if you attack, if there's one point, if you can change one point, everything else seems to fall in place behind it much easier than if you attack it on several fronts. So I'll do a summary describing this is where you've got to start, and then off you go, and you get your report, and off you go and make a start. And that's it, really. And then we keep in touch with people. I think we're still in touch with people over 3-4 years.
So, okay, so how long roughly would a sample take to come back? You know, if someone's worried about their dog.
Probably 2 weeks. And also, if you're worried about your dog, we tend to just send it into the lab and say, just put this in with because they've got research going on all the time, and they're really very good at that. But we don't, you know, it's all very hands-on, you know, and grassroots, I think, but it's very professional, and I'm very proud of the quality of what we do. I'm really, really pleased with that.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. You see, I'm intrigued by this now. So when you said you have a key, that there's one place to start in
Yeah,
fixing your dog's microbiome,
yeah.
what is that?
Well,
What could it be? I know every dog's different, but please give an example.
it could be pathogens, so something like Campylobacter, Helicobacter. If you're from a family with autism, I know it's got a new word now, and I'm really sorry. Is it neurogenerative? I'm sorry, I don't know what the new word is, but
I don't think anyone will mind. We
no,
apologise in advance.
but you'll share a microbiome with your dog. You share about 25% with the dog. So
Really? So is my microbiome. I read this somewhere recently,
yeah,
and it just interested me because I always say I think we're more dog than we
yes,
actually realize, because we've
yes,
evolved epigenetically together for
yes,
20 odd thousand years. So I really believe that. And
yeah.
then I was reading this. So please, we could talk for hours, Carol. I'm really excited about this. So so really, we're 25% dog. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, 25% dog, and that is time and time again. You get people. It was the autism part that really brought it home. They have a particular type of bacteria, an autistic human profile contains high levels of Sutterella, and that's passed on to the dog. But the dog doesn't. It just causes them discomfort because they don't really belong with the dog at that level. And so you have to treat both people with a kind of plant. We're quite big into plant antimicrobials, because antibiotics, you don't want to give antibiotics, obviously, because it destroys the microbiome. So we do it that way. But the cat is like the soil. The cat is closest to the soil, and
Oh,
the
wow.
dog is close to the human, and the horse is sort of somewhere in between, really.
So interesting. This is so interesting. I mean, surely this is making, kind of more sense of our own evolution through your research as well, would you say?
Uh, yeah, like I say, I think to me it's just logical. The microbiome is so incredibly logical. I think the other problem we have with dogs is that where you need the master switch is lack of diversity. So you get some dogs with a Shannon index diversity score of maybe 1.9, and it should be sort of 3 or 2.5 to 3. And so clearly the first master step that you have to take is to restore the diversity. And you can either do that, we're quite big on, quite fans of soil probiotics, or fecal matter transplants, I think, is the other way to kickstart that.
That's a very new area, isn't it? I know, actually, talking about Dr. Karen Becker again, she, I think, was one of the first to do a fetal transplant. Now, what would you say then about food and an average dog's diet in this country?
Bad,
I mean, how
bad.
do you feel about feeding dogs sterile diets?
Do you know, when we first started this, I was so shocked that of what was in a dog microbiome. I didn't. It really put me off writing a report, because the news was so grim, and what was going on was so, well, I can only say, quite shocking, that it was hard to get your head round, and hard to pass that on to someone who maybe didn't know much about microbiology and was going to get a report saying your dog is full of pathogens, and it's come from this source. But
What source would that be?
um, do you know, I think it's more processed food coming from food sources that have already been infected with a bacteria, that are factory farmed. I don't think, I mean, we're looking at insects at the moment and what bacteria are contained. So if you had an outbreak of disease in an insect factory, those bacteria would pass on. They're not killed by boiling them or heat. That dog will get the bacteria in its microbiome. And it depends at what percentage. If it may be all right if it's 0.1% of the biome, but if it starts to get up to 2 and 3% of the biome, then there's a knock-on set of changes that makes the dog ill, and it's quite rapid. The other thing is factory farmed fish. They're really bad for Shmonella. At certain times of the year, they'll have an outbreak of that disease, and then it gets into the dog.
Mm.
I think, and I don't know because I'm not as up on production methods, but if they're allowed, if the food isn't high enough in protein, I believe they can add protein in some form, and that can be from any source. I'm now talking about sort of kibble type food.
Yeah, no, I know you are. Yeah, absolutely. But then, and
Yeah,
indeed, with kibble, because obviously I'm a canine nutritionist, and with kibble, I get very upset really with kibble,
yeah.
because it's so misleading to people. That's what upsets me. The front of the packet might make it seem like a really good option for your dog. And if you don't know, if you've never had a dog before, then you think, oh, this looks really good. And everybody wants the best for their dog. I really
Mm,
believe that. But in fact, unwittingly, by accident, you can potentially be doing quite a lot of harm. I mean, I recently did quite a bit of research on glycotoxins in
mm,
processed food, AGEs that haven't really been studied and significantly on their effects on dogs. They have on humans. We all know, or a lot of people listening will know what an acrylamide is. Acrylamides have been said to be carcinogens to humans, and they are definitely in kibble,
yeah,
but people don't know that, and so over time, surely, particularly if your dog's antibiotic resistant already,
yeah.
they're going to become immunocompromised. Or am I barking up the wrong tree here?
No, because I think with when we were using the AI, we were putting a lot of dogs through and looking, and the AI was throwing up to 100% accuracy. The dogs with gastric discomfort, inflammation, and allergies, particularly, but it was pointing to some kind of environmental contaminant that, again, it would take probably a whole, set a whole bunch of researchers to keep looking into, but it's certainly a contaminant that's in food and possibly water, but mostly food. So if you're feeding whole ingredients, you've got less chance of that coming into the diet than if you're feeding something processed.
Right. Yep. 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 Makes sense, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, but what's quite frightening is the power those bacteria have. Because when you're talking about an infection, you may be talking about Campylobacter causing problems maybe at 10% of the whole biome. But for some reason, these environmental pollutants, they're at quite low levels, but they make a big difference. That's quite, I don't know, disconcerting because they're obviously talking to the body. They're obviously signaling in some way that I certainly won't be able to find out on my own, and it could be years before anyone looks into it at the depth we're doing now. So all you can do is just sort of put in your reports, look, don't feed that kind of food, and hopefully it'll catch on.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, I mean, I've been feeding a raw, balanced, complete diet for over 20 years. It goes back to my childhood, really, where we never fed our dogs. Well, kibble actually didn't really exist. I'm that old. But
Me too.
and my cat, who might just knock the microphone now, he eats raw as well. And my previous cat similarly. I mean, I suppose the question I'm gearing up to asking you would be, in your opinion, if you were to recommend a diet to a dog or a cat even, what would it be?
I think for sure bone broth with herbs in to put, because I'm not into digestion. I mean, you know, it's the I'm not a dog nutritionist, but I know what the biome needs. So bone broth with herbs that are cooked to release the polyphenol content, because what the biome needs are polyphenols,
Mhm.
and soil. So digging up bones, manky bones, the mankier the better, are buried in the muck pile and then ingested, great, but only if you don't have an antibiotic resistant biome to start with, um, and food that isn't factory farmed.
So interesting, isn't it? Yes, because we all saw Jamie Oliver's chicken campaign, and I know particularly chickens and turkeys, and well, I'm sure, and also, I mean, you read about industrial farming and it just makes you cry, doesn't
Yeah,
it? You
yeah,
know, yeah. But this is so interesting. So people can go on your website, can't they, Carol,
yeah.
and dig about. And if they're interested, like me, to order one of your kits, what's your website address?
It's www.petbiome.org.
Okay. I'm really also excited because I only discovered today that you're going to be exhibiting at the Natural Dog Expo in May. Is that right?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
oh, hurrah, because we're going to meet because I'm
Oh,
hosting
great.
it. Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Oh,
Yes.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Really
I'm
pleased.
sorry. It's my stray cat that moved in after my last cat sadly had an untimely death, Carol. We won't go there
Oh,
now. I know, I know. That was an environmental poisoning issue, actually. Not from what he ate, but yes, yes. But let's not go there. But so I've rehabbed this stray cat whose microbiome has, I think, clearly got better through, you know, a nice environment and security here and good care. And he's looking completely different to what he did 6 months ago.
mm.
And he's quite funny, actually. I've named him Baggy because he's got bags of character and he loves chomping into a very obligate carnivore type diet, which I hope you'll approve of.
Yeah, well, I have to say, when I suggested to a vet that the cat needed to eat furry things and you know, bones and feathers would be good, I think they were actually quite shocked. But I can only report what the biome needs, you know, because I'm not a nutritionist. I can say this is what it needs and this is where it'll get it from. And
Do you think
sometimes,
vets will, sorry, Carol, to
huh?
interrupt, but do you think vets will listen to you?
um, I don't know. It's a bit of a race, isn't it, between whether the big nutritional companies will get themselves set up to say this is what the biome needs, but it's just about what the little bit of research they've done and they've conveniently put it in a packet and they're marketing it. Um, and those vets that really want to understand about microbiology, because it's totally fascinating to me, especially with the knock-on effect to so many other diseases. And we do provide them with everything they need. I've just emailed one before talking to you and said, look, we do a consultation to get it over to you, how interesting and how relevant and how straightforward and logic it is. You know, because sometimes I think they worry that it's too complicated. You know, they don't have much time, do they? And it's just all too complicated.
What, too complicated to feed your pet on real food?
No, that's dead easy. But I think that I think that sort of terms and the I don't know. I think that I just get the feeling that if you talk about inflammation in the biome, they suddenly want to get a lot of diagnostic tools going at the same time that won't give them the same answer as a microbiome test, but maybe is easier to for them to understand. The microbiome is such a big ecosystem that they've got to get their head around a lot more information. Perhaps that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I suppose also vets haven't really studied the microbiome awfully much because it's quite new, isn't it? Really, I mean, I know it's been there forever, but in terms of us discovering that it's there as this lining in everybody's guts, and you know, and the fact that it does contain bacteria, which so many people think, oh, bacteria is bad, we must live in a sterile world. But you look at nature, and that's not how nature works, is it?
No, no. I think I'm a big one on I like the bad guys. I love a pathogen in the microbiome primes the immune system. Because if you think of the microbiome to me, I always look at it as though it's a city. And in a city that sort of works as a city, you've got a police force. Well, you've only got a police force, which you have in the microbiome, it's called Clostridium. If you've got, you know, people that cause damage or are robbers or, you know, break the law really. And I think a pathogen is like that. And a good police force will understand that and be able to control it. So if you get rid of all the pathogens, you don't need a police force. And that shows in the microbiome because you don't have the strength and the diversity within the Clostridium to control lots of pathogens.
So interesting. We could talk for ages, and I really hope that this has stimulated some thought for everyone listening. And I know if people email you, I know it's all clear on your website to do that,
Yeah.
you know, you'll be very happy to answer questions, perhaps even from some vets would
Yes.
be really good, wouldn't it? It would be really good for vets to become really interested in this city, the city inside us that
Yeah.
is the microbiome. I love that analogy. Carol, I'm so excited about meeting you in real life in a few weeks. So thank you so much. I'd love to regroup actually and do another podcast. Would you be up for it?
Yeah. No, I'd love to. Yeah, I'd
Because we
love
haven't
to.
actually spoken about your dogs. You've got one of the most rare British breeds of dogs that isn't actually Kennel Club registered, just segueing a little bit, Crufts is coming up, and you won't see a Plummer Terrier in the show ring, which I think is a great shame. Now I've actually seen one. What a striking dog, Carol, you own.
Yeah. Well, he's very beautiful, very beautiful. We lost a Fell Terrier, and I never thought that I'd replace him. And then the Plummer Terrier came along. We are quite big terrier people. I've also got a Patterdale.
Oh gosh,
Um,
that's brilliant. I knew why I liked you.
yeah.
I've got terriers. You see, I've got a bull terrier and an English toy terrier. Yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, terriers, who would be without one, really? But we also have bigger dogs. We quite like a mix, but we've just got two small ones at the moment. And the Plumber is just probably the most challenging dog I've ever owned, and the most in-your-face dog. And he's so tuned to you. I've never probably had a dog quite like him, but I can recommend them.
No, lovely. And are they all ginger and white?
Yeah, I think there's some that you can have a bit of black in, but a lady called Chris Glover runs the club on Facebook, and if you want to see more, you know, go there and there's loads, but they're ever so similar. I think the gene pool's quite small, which is why we've kept him entire. I probably would have kept him entire anyway, because there just aren't that many about.
And I bet you when we have our next conversation, you might reveal that spaying and neutering, could it damage the microbiome?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
It's
that's so
changed. It's
exciting.
Yeah, it's changed my mind totally. I have to say, I don't think you can look at the microbiome, look at the unseen, without really it hitting you in the face how much it changes what you can see. The unseen is probably more important than what you can see. And we've got the tools to look at it now, you know, it's not a mystery. The technology is absolutely fantastic. And, you know, why not use it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I've learnt today the only good use I can see for artificial intelligence so far. So
Yes.
this is even more exciting. But Caroline, let's leave it there and leave people wanting more and leave people wanting to find out more. That's the key to do. But I've so enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you, Anna. Thank
No,
you.
no, no. I'm going to be getting one of these tests actually, because I'm absolutely fascinated by the microbiome. And there's a lot of different types of health tests out there at the moment. Actually,
Yeah.
lots of people are getting involved with tests before you treat. which is, you know, a mantra that is very prevalent in Scandinavia. You know, you can't just go and buy a flea treatment in Sweden. You know, you have to be prescribed with fleas or prescribed with worms before, which again, I think is important. Again, I'm sure for the microbiome, but also for the planet. Thank you, Carol. Gosh, thank
you're
you.
welcome.
And until the next time, thank you very much.
Yeah, take care.
Well, that was part 1 of our conversation with Carol. She's going to be back next week, and we're going a little bit deeper. And you're right, it is time for Woof of the Week. Never underestimate what the great old Hippocrates says, which is, let medicine be thy food, and food be thy medicine. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please rate and review the show wherever you tune into your podcasts, because it makes a massive difference. Thanks again, of course, to Carol Hughes for joining us today, and all the links are in the show notes. Thanks, of course, to Mike, my producer, for all the music and production as ever. And find out more about him at Pod People UK. And for me, I'm at AnnaWebDogs, or check out my website for various packages on nutrition, behaviour, or a combination of both. What's that, Mr. Binks? Yes, you're right. We will be back in your feed next Sunday. So if you haven't subscribed, go on, and that way you'll never miss another show. Bye for now.